Our next speaker is to introduce our guest speaker this morning. I want to introduce Dr. Dale Gieringer. He's vice chairman of our board of directors. He's the head of California NORML for a long time. He's been doing that. He's a scientist. He's an activist. He's a spokesman. He's our friend in the movement, Dr. Dale Gieringer.
Great, good to see all of you out there, and welcome to Berkeley, California, where medical marijuana is legal. Let me ask now, how many people are from states where medical marijuana is legal these days? Hey, we've made a lot of progress, haven't we? That's really encouraging, but we still have a work cut out for us. But it's great to be here specifically in Berkeley because I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but Berkeley is actually the birthplace of successful marijuana politics. It has the very first marijuana legalization, decriminalization, or whatever ordinance it was back in 1973. The Berkeley Marijuana Initiative passed and was the first voter-passed marijuana reform initiative in the country. Unfortunately, what it tried to do was basically repeal the state marijuana laws in the city of Berkeley, and that didn't sit too well with the courts of California, and it was eventually taken to court, and the California Supreme Court threw it out. But the good citizens of Berkeley, undaunted, came back with another marijuana initiative, which also passed easily, and which is still in effect today. And under the Berkeley marijuana ordinance of, I believe, 1977, it's been a while now, marijuana became the lowest enforcement priority in the city. And if any of you folks out there have ever heard the term lowest enforcement priority, here's where it all began. Well, we've lived rather happily for many years since here in Berkeley under the Berkeley Marijuana Ordinance, but there have been ups and downs, as you can imagine. There was actually an attempt to repeal the initiative back in the height of the drug war back in 1990, but they were unable to quite get enough votes, signatures to get on the ballot, so it never came about. But we've had episodes, in particular, about 1998, 1999, we saw a crackdown in arrests going on Telegraph Avenue. I don't know if any of you visited up there in Berkeley. At that time, the sort of the classic Berkeley street scene up there, and it's been a pretty open area for many, many years, but there were complaints about pot dealers or people hanging out with pot on them. And we noticed a spike in arrests going on at that time. And we did that actually thanks to the Berkeley Ordinance, which required the police department to keep track of the numbers. And the only reason actually that all of this came to my attention so soon was thanks to our next guest speaker, Councilman Kriss Worthington of Berkeley, whose office was monitoring those numbers and actually called it to our attention. And that inspired all of us to see if we could do something about the spike in marijuana arrests in Berkeley. So a group of us got together and we worked on proposing a kinder and safer streets act to try to straighten things out. And Kriss again helped us spearhead this effort, which, let me say, never actually passed into law, but the ruckus we raised up, and the ruckus that Kriss raised on the city council was enough to make the police department notice. And sure enough, arrests dropped off, and it's been pretty constant and quiet ever since. Now, Kriss has been on the city council now since like 1996, and he's been one of the real, true friends of civil liberties and of marijuana people and of medical marijuana here in Berkeley. While he's been in office. Kriss is one of the most devoted city council persons I know. You see him everywhere. He's about town riding his ecologically friendly bike and waving hello to everybody and advancing really every civil liberties and progressive cause around town. Most recently, of course, we were dealing with the DEA here in Berkeley about a year ago. You may know we had a raid that imperiled one of Berkeley's most upstanding clubs and one of those, I guess, sponsors of this conference, Berkeley Patients Group. Once again, the city rallied to the support of medical marijuana, and Kriss helped lead the response of the city, and we haven't heard any reply from the DEA. It's been fairly quiet around here because I think we've made our opinions fairly well known, and Kriss makes his opinions pretty fairly well known. He's been a good friend of the community, and I want to introduce Kriss Worthington.